Welcome to Scriptural Science, a presentation of Truth and Life Institute, Boston, Massachusetts, and Oba, Nigeria. The following is a subsection of the book. Whoever says that sex is good is a liar. Written and published by Ifeanyi Chukwujima, scriptural scientist and a servant of God. This subsection's ID is sex makes unholy 5:1. Sex burns. That human sexuality has some usefulness does not remove its dubiousness. It first surfaced out of human rebellion against God. God then sanctioned it for human procreation because the humans have lost their holiness and had subjected themselves to an act God had reserved for animals because animals do not have conscience, but operate from instinct. But because humans have conscience, they would be burned by sex if and whenever they misuse it. That is simply the nature of the beast called sex. Henceforward, humans become sexual beings. And the early humans stuck to the purpose for which sex was allowed. Looking through the Bible, it becomes evident that the people following Adam and Eve were not into sex like we are into it today. Sex was a seldom act from all indications. That Noah was 500 years old before he started having children points to the infrequency of sex in his life. It was the same way with the rest of the Bible descendants of Adam and Eve. Men grew to be hundreds of years old before they got married and started a family. There is nothing anywhere that suggests that people were less fertile then than now, so the lack of children in the early years of these people suggests that they waited what is now several lifetimes before they even had their first sexual encounters with their wives. And as the human lifetimes were shortened due to human sinfulness, men started having children earlier because they now lived much shorter lives than their ancestors. Adam was 130 years old when he had his third son, Seth, who the Bible said was in Adam's image and his likeness. And according to the Bible, there was a huge gap between when Adam had Cain and Abel and when he had Seth. Abel and Cain had grown into adults and started their own lives and occupations before Cain murdered Abel. And Abel had been murdered before Seth was born because Adam was quoted by the Bible as saying, "God has granted me another child in place of Abel, since Cain killed him." Genesis 4 verse 25. Following, find the genealogy of Adam and how long each of his descendants was before he had a son, and how long each of them lived altogether. When Seth had lived 105 years, he became the father of Enosh. 7 after he became the father of Enosh, Seth lived 807 years and had other sons and daughters. 8 altogether, Seth lived a total of 912 years, and then he died. 9 when Enosh had lived 90 years, he became the father of Kenan. 10 after he became the father of Kenan, Enosh lived 815 years and had other sons and daughters. 11 altogether, Enosh lived a total of 905 years, and then he died. 12 when Kenan had lived 70 years, he became the father of Mahalalel. 13 after he became the father of Mahalalel, Kenan lived 840 years and had other sons and daughters. 14 altogether, Kenan lived a total of 910 years, and then he died. 15 when Mahalalel had lived 65 years, he became the father of Jared. 16 after he became the father of Jared, Mahalalel lived 830 years and had other sons and daughters. 17 altogether, Mahalalel lived a total of 895 years, and then he died. 18 when Jared had lived 162 years, he became the father of Enoch. 19 after he became the father of Enoch, Jared lived 800 years and had other sons and daughters. 20 altogether, Jared lived a total of 962 years, and then he died. 21 when Enoch had lived 65 years, he became the father of Methuselah. 22 after he became the father of Methuselah, Enoch walked faithfully with God 300 years and had other sons and daughters. 23 altogether, Enoch lived a total of 365 years. 24 Enoch walked faithfully with God, then he was no more, because God took him away. 25 when Methuselah had lived 187 years, he became the father of Lamech. 26 after he became the father of Lamech, Methuselah lived 782 years and had other sons and daughters. 27 altogether, Methuselah lived a total of 969 years, and then he died. 28 when Lamech had lived 182 years, he had a son. 29 he named him Noah and said, "He will comfort us in the labor and painful toil of our hands caused by the ground the Lord has cursed." 30 after Noah was born, Lamech lived 595 years and had other sons and daughters. 31 altogether, Lamech lived a total of 777 years, and then he died. 32 after Noah was 500 years old, he became the father of Shem, Ham, and Japheth. Genesis 5 verses 6 to 32. But by the time of Noah, human sexuality began to attract unwanted elements. The sons of God became attracted to the daughters of men and began to marry them. Here is that account for you in the Bible. When human beings began to increase in number on the earth and daughters were born to them, two the sons of God saw that the daughters of humans were beautiful, and they married any of them they chose. 3 Then the Lord said, "My spirit will not contend with humans forever, for they are mortal. Their days will be 120 years." For the Nephilim were on the earth in those days, and also afterward, when the sons of God went to the daughters of humans and had children by them. They were the heroes of old, men of renown. 5 The Lord saw how great the wickedness of the human race had become on the earth, and that every inclination of the thoughts of the human heart was only evil all the time. 6 The Lord regretted that he had made human beings on the earth, and his heart was deeply troubled. 7 So the Lord said, "I will wipe from the face of the earth the human race I have created, and with them the animals, the birds, and the creatures that move along the ground, for I regret that I have made them." 8 But Noah found favor in the eyes of the Lord. 9 This is the account of Noah and his family. Noah was a righteous man, blameless among the people of his time, and he walked faithfully with God. 10 Noah had 3 sons, Shem, Ham, and Japheth. 11 Now the earth was corrupt in God's sight and was full of violence. 12 God saw how corrupt the earth had become, for all the people on earth had corrupted their ways. Genesis 6 verses 1 to 12. Sexual perversion became the order of the day, and violence was everywhere. It is important to remember at this juncture that when God sanctioned sex as a means of human procreation at the garden following man's disobedience of him, the only commands he gave was about sex and obedience, and those commands were directed to the woman. Your desire will be for your husband, and he will rule over you. Genesis 3 verse 16. If humanity had stuck to that sanction at the garden for human sexuality, repulsive sexual practices, and the associated violence would not have ruled the world at the time of Noah. But it was clear humanity had continued in their rebellion against God, that the forbidden act which came by way of rebellion got even more perverse, forcing God to end it all and start afresh. The more law God gave to mankind, the more sin increased. Therefore, indiscriminate human sexual activities largely led to God's decision to destroy the entire world. Indiscriminate sex always leads to violence and destruction and continues to this day. So, God wiped out everybody and everything except Noah and his family because Noah was blameless among the people of his time, the Bible said. Then came Sodom and Gomorrah with their sexual pervasiveness, including homosexuality, which became the sexual preference throughout the city of Sodom. The case of the angels of God arriving at the city for the destruction of the city and being targeted for homosexual violence underscored the pervasiveness of the city's sexuality. The angels removed Lot and his family from the city and burned the people and everything else in the city down with burning sulfur from heaven. Then there was the case of the Pharaoh of Egypt, who took Abraham's wife and was crippled by God until he released the woman back to Abraham and paid Abraham great restitution for attempting to defile his wife. A similar episode involving Abraham and his wife also happened with King Abimelech. And he too paid Abraham and Sarah restitution to have God lift his curse over Abimelech's family. Samson and Delilah were another classic case of sex's evil trance-like powers. Once you were hooked, and not even the shout of death could deter you. Samson was taken by Delilah's regal beauty that he paid with his life instead of removing himself from her. Judah's one night stand with his disguised daughter in law almost wrecked his life. But God's hand was in it, and it became a blessing in disguise. Herod, the king of Judah at the time of Jesus Christ, beheaded John the Baptist and handed his head to his wife's daughter in a platter because of his infatuation with her jaw-dropping sexiness. He offered the young woman anything, up to half of his kingdom, to dance so he could watch her dance. The vindictive young woman took him on his offer and gave him what he asked for. But when she named her price, it was too unreal for the king to honor, but he must, because he had made her his offer before the princess of the kingdom. So he ordered a prophet of God murdered and handed his head on a platter to a young woman he was supposed to bring up as a daughter. In addition, the woman he was married to was his own brother's wife, which was decried by John the Baptist, and his condemnation of it earned him the woman's unquenchable scorn. That was transferred to her daughter, and that cost the prophet his life. It was all about sex and its twisted emotions. There was also a near extinction of the tribe of Benjamin over promiscuous sex. A Levite's wife had left him, and he went to bring his wife back. He and his messenger journeyed for a couple of days and fetched the woman. Then on their way back home, nighttime befell them, and they decided to avoid the Jebusites who were then living in Jerusalem and instead bunk with their own kinsmen, the tribe of Benjamin. This required more trekking so that they could be with their own brothers where they expected hospitality and good welcome. But instead, they realized that no one was interested in providing a place for them to stay the night. Finally, this old man returned from his farm and took them in to spend the night, only to have the people of the town attack the old man's residence at night, demanding that he send the two visiting men out so they could have homosexual relations with the visitor. The old man refused and instead offered to send his own virgin daughter to them in the place of the men, but the mob refused and insisted on molesting the visitor. Finally, the Levite sent his wife out to them when the men refused to leave. And in the morning when they opened the door, he saw his wife perched against the door, dead. He loaded the dead body of his wife on his donkey and took the body home with him. When he got home, he divided the dead body of his wife into 12 portions and sends each portion to each tribe of Israel with a message for them to rally to discuss why they were receiving body parts of a dead woman. They all assembled, but the tribe of Benjamin that was responsible for the death and sexual molestation of the woman refused to show up at the gathering. The rest of Israel then decided to go to war with their brothers, the Benjaminites, for the atrocity they committed and their refusal to appear in God's assembly. They inquired of God on whether they should attack their brothers or not, and God sanctioned their attack. So, they went to war with their brothers who had also prepared to defend themselves against any attack by their brothers. But the 11 tribes suffered a great defeat and a great loss of lives. They were hurt and confused because they had consulted God and He approved the attack. After crying and mourning for the whole day, they consulted with God again, and He sanctioned their attack again. They attacked, and once again, they sustained casualties. They cried again in disappointment and mourned their brothers who were lost at war. Yet again, they received God's approval to attack. They attacked, and this time, they became victorious over the tribe of Benjamin, their brothers. And their victory almost wiped out the entire tribe of Benjamin, except for a few hundred of them that ran into the mountain and were there for months. As for the entire Benjaminites' women and children, they were all killed in this final attack. And the 11 tribes had sworn prior to going to war with the tribe of Benjamin never to give their daughters in marriage to the Benjaminite men because of their atrocious act of sexual violence, sexual promiscuous, and homosexuality. Even though the 11 tribes had avenged of the wrong done to the murdered wife of the Levite and had brought to the brink of extinction one tribe in Israel, they went into mourning for the Benjaminites because unless they came up with a plan to save the tribe will cease to be part of Israel forever. So, they hatched a plan and got foreign wives for the surviving Benjamin men they had driven into the mountains and restored the tribe. This again is the undeniable result of sexual pervasiveness. Nothing good brings this type of devastation. Sex is evil and unfailingly visits its woes on susceptible men and women. It usually starts with one bad judgment and a false sense of security against the formidable power of sex. And before it is long, one becomes a slave to it. King David had a very classic experience with this evil called sex. David, a man married to many. Wives who had all anybody would ever wanted could not control the urge to take another man's wife. When he got snagged up in sex's net of destruction, instead of facing up to his lapse in judgment, he turned to murder to conceal his sin, thereby multiplying his sin. God finally confronted him with his sin, and he confessed and became mellow, but the effect of his sin lived with him till his death and followed his family after his death. The effect of the result of sexual sins could go over several generations, and it did with King David. So Uriah, whose wife and life David took, would finally receive justice. And to be sent a clear message that the product of sin is never a reward, God made the child Uriah's wife had for David out of this great transgression to die shortly after birth. King David lost the child he conceived out of wedlock with another man's wife, and out of wickedness to another man, a patriot of Israel who refused to have relations with his own wife out of considerations to his brothers who were dying at the war front. David's loss of the child he got out of the sinful relation to another man's wife adds more validity to why Cain, the first product of human sexuality, turned out to have the vestiges of evil which stemmed from that unholy act that is human sexuality. King Solomon, who happened to come from sexual relations between King David and the woman the king deceitfully took from another man, also fell into sexual snares himself. Like his father before him, he loved sexual relations with multiple women and married 1,000 of them from different nations and culture. And these foreign women brought with them into Jerusalem gods from their lands, and King Solomon accommodated these women and their gods to the point it provoked God. But because of the loyalty of his father, King David, to God, God decided not to take away all of Israel from Solomon and his descendants, but to remove 10 out of the 12 tribes from under their control. Here is the Bible citing King Solomon's sexual troubles. Was it not because of marriages like these that Solomon, king of Israel, sinned? Among the many nations there was no king like him. He was loved by his God, and God made him king over all Israel, but even he was led into sin by foreign women. Nehemiah 13 verse 26. Mankind, losing its holiness, made human sexuality an unholy choice for humanity, the right choice for human procreation. The unholy mankind was permitted by God to increase and multiply through an unholy method. And because they had chosen this unholy method to procreate through disobedience of God, only the grace of God through the blood of his Son Jesus Christ can redeem them. Jesus Christ must come into the world just as Adam did, so he could fulfill what Adam failed to fulfill. After he had fulfilled everything, he would then sacrifice his life to redeem all mankind. And that was exactly what Christ did. That is why the Bible says, "So it is written, the first man Adam became a living being, the last Adam a life-giving spirit." 1 Corinthians 15:45. Why does the Bible call Jesus Christ the last Adam when all human beings are born in the image and likeness of Adam, starting from Seth, Adam's and Eve's third son? The first Adam was created holy by God, without the complicity of sin brought about by the evil spirit that is sex, as in all human births. God then took something from Adam and created Eve also holy. Everything God made with his hands is holy. So Adam was created holy and Eve was created holy. In the same manner God prepared a body for Adam, through his Spirit, God prepared a body inside Virgin Mary's womb for his Son Jesus Christ so he could be born as a human baby, which had become the method of human multiplication since the rebellion of Adam and Eve at the Garden of Eden. Through Jesus Christ, who was with God from the beginning, and by him, the first Adam was created. Yet, the same Jesus chose to come into the world as a human baby to correct what the Adam had destroyed through disobedience of God, thereby achieving what was intended for Adam to achieve but didn't. Jesus Christ took the human form and came into the world to reinstate humanity on the glorious pathway God has set humanity on from the very start. Therefore, the first Adam refers to the holy Adam when Adam was first created by God, and not the Adam that all mankind had become after the rebellion of Adam and Eve at the Garden of Eden. The holy and immortal Adam that God first created and commissioned is the Adam whose assignment Jesus Christ came to finish. That is why the holy and almighty Jesus Christ is referred to by the Bible as the last Adam. The Adam that emerged from the rebellion was a far cry from the immortal Adam that God first created and commissioned to a glorious eternal destiny. And it took Eve 3 pregnancies before mankind achieved its current fully biodegradable and totally corruptible body. The genetic mutations that took place in Adam and Eve at the instance of their transgression had finally become permanent human genetic traits. That is why the Bible says that Seth was born in the image and likeness of the mortal Adam. And Jesus, the last Adam, became a life-giving spirit, the Christ, because he maintained his holiness throughout and perfectly completed the assignment he came into the world to accomplish.